Hey everyone. So, listen, we know there are some pretty controversial opinions floating right now about rendering. Yeah, I know. And honestly, a lot of SolidWorks users are thinking about them, even if they aren't saying them directly to us. Things like rendering takes too long and it's not worth it. I've heard no one can tell the difference between a 10-minute render and a 10-hour render. And the big one, I'm going to say it, AI has already killed photo rendering. Whew. And today, we're not avoiding these hot takes. So, Jesse, we're actually going to throw you right in front of them.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Good, because we're going to pressure test all three of those, and we're going to do it live on today's live design.
Yeah, we are, and I'm actually I'm pretty excited about this. I don't really love debates, to be honest, but I do like talking both sides of a topic. So I think this is going to be fun, and I'm glad I'm doing it with you because you already have some rendering knowledge yourself. So I think it's going to be fun to talk around these. And as I was going through this, it's kind of a different take on rendering info. I hope it's going to be helpful. I think it will be. It was fun to think through these, and I kind of found a different way through some of these questions than I thought. So yeah, I'm excited for this conversation.
Sweet, man. Well, should we dive in? We got
Yeah.
an audience coming in as we go through. If you guys are having questions, comments, you want to share some of your experiences, use the chat. We love to see interaction there. We love to see the conversations continue. So yeah, dive into it. And let's get started. Hey, Jesse, let's hit that first live take.
All right.
Dude, it takes too long.
It takes too long and isn't worth it. All right. I'm going to say that this had some relevancy in the past. I think now it's pretty much just excuses. I have 5 rebuttals, I guess, to this. The first one I think is just that the old mindset is kind of history. And that old mindset came from the days of CPU rendering with long waits. And it was kind of this scene, right? Where you're just kind of, set up a render, you kick it off, and then you're just sitting around watching your computer catch fire, not really sure what's going on. You're just hoping for the best. Something comes back, and then you realize that it's not right. And you got to go make some changes and set it back up again, wait for your computer to catch fire and come back, and something else comes back, and you got to do it all over again. And the amount of time that took between click a button, see what happens, it comes back wrong, is hours or days sometimes, depending on the size. So there was some relevancy to this concept, I think, in the past. And I do remember these days. This was one of the first renderings that I did, and I remember thinking, whoa, this is cool. Like, rendering is awesome. And this was Photo V360, somewhere around 2012. And I remember vividly this situation of setting something up. You set up some materials, you hit the button, go get lunch, come back, and it's all wrong. And it takes just huge amount of times to iterate and try to get to something where you want it to be. Now, the image that I ended up coming up with is still kind of cool, right? For, back then, but it took forever to get there. So I think that mindset is still kind of stuck in the minds of people who may have tried rendering at some point in the past, or just have heard stories about rendering just takes a million years from when you hit go till when you get something back, and then there's that black box in between. So yeah, that mindset was valid. I don't think it is anymore.
Yeah, I agree, man. On I was laughing at your little cartoon there, because what I used to do is in the wintertime, I would close my heated vent in my office whenever I'd go to render, and like an animation sequence, and 24 hours later come in the next day, and my office was nice and toasty, nice and warm. So like, to me, it was always laughing at heating the house with rendering, but also the bill that I was paying around
Right.
power for it.
It may not be the most efficient way, but it is effective. Yeah, definitely. Now, the reason why I think that is kind of in the past, there's, at least for us, there's 3 things that I'll call out as far as modern tech that sort of eliminates those things. The first one is fast mode. Fast mode has been in Visualize for a long time, but it got revamped, a couple years ago, I think. The new fast mode is incredible. It's built on NVIDIA technology, and what it does is it renders a small image and then upscales it. So it can do it really fast. This is just a toggle button in Visualize. You can choose what mode you're rendering in. So the little screen capture that I have here is me just spinning around a scene that I have of the Vermeer. This is real time. So this mode, this rendering that you're seeing, is live as I'm, whipping it around, and it's a fairly large project nonetheless. Obviously, the Vermeer is quite a big unit, but then I've got some other things in there. So it's around 17 million poly, a little bit less than that if you look in the details at the bottom. But you can see there's, virtually no lag. I have a pretty good GPU, but still, for a project of this size to be spinning this around and rendering it basically real time is really impressive. I do all of my setup work in fast mode. You can use it for final renderings too. It just depends on what your final setup is going to be. Sometimes I'll switch over to accurate mode for finals. A lot of times I will. But even just for setup, this basically knocks out that concept that we were talking about previously, just with this one feature.
Yeah, it's almost instant. It looks like almost instant rendering you're getting with it.
Yeah, now, it's basically real time.
I got a question for you in terms of when would I use fast versus the accurate rendering mode?
I would say give fast a try if you haven't used it. Give fast a try and see what you get. If you like the results, there are some limitations with what it can do, but they're pretty few. And I won't call things out specifically because it's also progressing too, right? This technology is still pretty new. So it keeps progressing with the base technology. And getting better and better. So I would say just give it a try with the scene that you have. If the results look as good as you need them to be, perfect. There may not even be a need to switch into accurate mode. If you have more advanced things going on, like we were just doing, setups for FDO2 with volumetrics and things like that, which we'll look at in a little bit. That might be a time that you'd want to switch over into accurate mode, but for run-of-the-mill rendering, fast mode is probably going to do a pretty good job for you.
So majority of our users out there are probably going to get the results they're looking for in fast mode, and those kind of, volumetrics, or when you're getting a little more advanced rendering, that's when you'd maybe look switching over.
Yeah, for sure. Or, like I said, worst case scenario, use this for all of your setup. This will save you heaps of time just in setting things up, because you're getting a really, really fast, pretty accurate view of it instantaneously. So you can dial things in very quickly with this. And then once you get to the point where you're ready to send it out, if you wanted to use accurate mode, you can just do that and just use it right at the last final step.
So the new fast mode is the old rasterized, where we would just use that to set it up.
There is also still preview mode.
Nice.
So that is the full raster mode. That's still there. Fast mode was basically just a light version of the ray tracing that we had previously, but now it's totally revamped, and it's just its own entity. So I really don't use preview mode anymore, because fast mode is as fast or faster than preview mode actually, and you get a basically finished rendering in real time.
All right, so 10 hours to 10 minutes, you're starting to sway me here.
Right, basically right off the bat, instantaneous. The next thing, so that is, we talk about AI replacing rendering in a little bit. This is a way that AI is already enhancing rendering, right? That it's AI underlying technology there. Same with the denoiser. The denoiser is a great tool. This is in accurate mode, which I was just talking about. And in accurate mode, you'll see it's running those passes. So basically, rendering is tracing rays of light, and it just traces them over and over and over again. It traces them back to where the camera is looking, and it just keeps doing those passes until it gets the accurate pixel color. While it's doing that, you'll see this kind of snowblind effect, which people are probably used to seeing in a rendering software, right? You kind of get this haze of a noise that goes over the top. We also have AI tools that will eliminate that. So it will take that out as sort of a filter. Now, this is another great way. If you do need to use accurate mode for one of your setups, you can still get a pretty clear picture within a couple of passes run. It will just snap into that mode and start removing that. You may lose a little bit of detail here and there because it's just making guesses to remove those fireflies, we'll call them. But you will get a much quicker overall picture of how things are looking. And then again, you can choose however your output settings need to be. So we really have a good handle on both sides, both AI powered, of whatever rendering mode you need to use for your project. There's a tool to make that significantly faster as you're working. And one of the things that really takes a lot of time in rendering is just the setup. It's more so than the rendering, which we'll talk more in detail about.
When I first denoiser came out, that was a huge advancement. That's something that they've continued to develop. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it has some learning in the background. So it's picking up, initially it would take out a lot of textures, like you'd have a brushed appearance or something, and it didn't really know what to do with that. So it would totally smooth it out. But over the years, it has gotten better and more accurate and smarter to know what is noise and what is texture that you've actually applied. So it has gotten smarter.
Okay, but what about, the big one we always run into hearing is animations, because animations take forever, every frame. You can use these types of things there or no?
Definitely, yeah. And I will often use fast mode for animation clips. The denoiser, maybe a little bit less so. The only reason why I say that is because there are different ways of denoising. So this is denoising a static image, where each one of those frames that goes through. So if you're not familiar with animation, basically you're just rendering all the frames that need to stack together to make a video. So you're making 30 frames that go in a second. They all play back like a flip book, right? So if you're denoising each one of those images, the denoiser is making its best approximation of what it needs to remove. That may not be exactly the same as the next frame or the next frame or the next frame. So there are really advanced denoising tools that have temporal denoising that look at the previous and next frame and try to smooth out that denoising across them. We don't do any of that. But the fast mode is that's basically the same across the board. So if fast mode works well, then that's a great way to do it. So the denoiser will work. You might just get slight flickering. Although, to be honest, I really haven't noticed that much. It does a pretty good job. And again, it's probably something that nobody will notice, right? So yeah, both of those tools are available for animations, and a great time to use them.
All right.
Lastly, we have the DSPBR, which we added in SOLIDWORKS for last release. So you'll see that was in SOLIDWORKS. Import that directly into Visualize. It looks identical, 1-to-1, when you get into Visualize. So here I'm just setting up some miscellaneous things where you would be building context around those appearances, but you don't have to rework appearances in Visualize once you get them out of SOLIDWORKS if you're using those new appearances. That's a huge time saver. Obviously, a lot of the rendering is just setting up appearances. If you already have those set pretty well in SOLIDWORKS, by the time you bring them in, no rework needed, right? You just import it, and then you can set up whatever added context you want to set up in Visualize. So another great time saver.
Now, so as for the DSPBR, on that one, is that what version, I guess, SOLIDWORKS and Visualize do I need to get that?
Yes. So the materials have already been there in Visualize for quite some time. The libraries now match between Visualize and SOLIDWORKS for the full release of 2026. So 2026 GA release which came out last fall. That material of DSPBR appearances is available. You can use them in SOLIDWORKS. Now, obviously, there's going to be a little bit of lag for you guys who are watching, because you already have a bunch of legacy appearances applied to all of your existing stuff. But as you start using those new DSPBRs on your new projects and revising old projects, you're going to get that translation is going to be even more seamless and a lot faster as you start using that system. So super excited for that. I mean, that clip that you saw in SOLIDWORKS looks incredibly good for being in SOLIDWORKS. If I can get this to skip back, but it looks amazing in SOLIDWORKS just for SOLIDWORKS. But then when you translate it into Visualize, it's 1-to-1.
Yeah, so these DSPBR materials in SOLIDWORKS, does that give a better appearance than like the old appearance style?
It does. It just gives you more control. So you can see, like on this one, you can see there's a bump map involved, and you just have more data to tell the renderer what to do with it.
Nice. Yeah. So you probably even get some like decent screenshots on a SOLIDWORKS.
You can, and the great thing is you can get some decent screenshots, but there's no reason to even do that anymore, because Visualize is also built-in background renderer for SOLIDWORKS as well. So you can just click render and it will render in the background. So if that's all you need, then you've saved a huge ton of time there, right? So just for quick and dirty things, you can just render directly out of SOLIDWORKS.
All right, you're swaying my opinion here, Jesse.
All right. I see
Might
we
have
already
to-
got our timer limit come up, and I'm on 3 of my 5. So the next one is the product timeline. So, we say rendering takes too long. Okay, well, what's the alternative? The alternative is you need to do physical photo shoot. A physical photo shoot can't be done until the prototype is finished, and it's got to be finished to a point where it looks basically like the product is going to when it gets released. That's not true of rendering. Rendering can start as soon as the model is ready to be prepped. So as soon as the design work is done in SolidWorks, you can start rendering. So if you think about it in that context, if rendering took 5 times longer than doing a photo shoot, even if that was the case, you'd still be saving a ton of time, right? Because you could start sometimes months in advance of when you would be able to even start thinking about doing a physical photo shoot. So any time that you're gaining in that whole timeline is huge time savings there.
Yeah, makes sense. All right.
Obviously, Mike, you and I were both photographers, so I'm not putting down doing physical photo shoots because sometimes product photographers are incredible and what they do is amazing. There may still be times to use that. But if you can start this process early, you can build some hype on social media, on your website with images that are already coming out that look realistic. That's a huge benefit.
Well, I think about Vermeer, one of the flagship customers of ours that we've highlighted over the last year. And if you go, they've got the Bore store where you can buy all like the end drill bits. There are thousands of parts on there, and they're all physically, manufactured components that they've taken photos of, and they're not, they're fine. But that was something to me. It was like, man, you could have virtualized this whole thing before anything was made. Had that catalog ready to go. So yeah, companies doing like online parts catalogs, rendering is definitely no brainer.
Especially for parts like that are not, you don't have a whole catalog of parts done at once, right? You've got hundreds of them done, and then a year later you come out with another one. Okay, well now we got to set up the studio again, right? And that's kind of my next point, is that the rework multiplier for rendering is important. If you need to do something again or do something that already matches what you already have, well, you're into the storage facility, right? You're grabbing all your gear, you're setting up the studio again. Hopefully you get it set up the same way that you had it before, because now there's a window that wasn't there before, right? There's so many variables to getting a physical photo taken again that matches something else, or a material changes that we can't use. Our supplier changed, we got to use this different material, or we're adding a new color. The rework and doing a physical photo shoot is pretty significant. And that is an area where rendering really has a multiplying factor. So even again, if the setup was really time consuming, the rework on the back end might save you multiples of effort compared to what you would do with physical photos. For example, we have the cool RX here. If suddenly we wanted the same exact image, but now the powder coating is yellow, open the file, right click, swap, hit render, done. If this was a physical photo, that would take forever, right? We come out with a new color. New color is orange. Open the file, zoop, make an adjustment to the appearance, hit render. It's almost instantaneous to take advantage of what you already have and make a slight change or make a tweak. That if any of that is coming down the road, which we all know it always does, right? Something always changes somewhere. The rework is basically instantaneous. It's free. If you want to think of it that way.
Yeah, you got one project file to manage.
Yep.
With infinite possibilities versus thousands of raw, film images from a SD card.
Yep.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
For sure. Lastly is just a quick tip, and that is with rendering, the effort is proportional to what you need. You don't always need to take a ton of time setting something up if you only need something for an internal review meeting or something. We just talked about being able to render directly out of SolidWorks now. That might be totally sufficient for what you need, or maybe you need a beauty shot for the website, and it's going to take you more effort to figure that out. But with rendering, you get to choose. With photography, it's basically the same amount of effort anytime. You got to set everything up. You got to set up your lights, figure out where they need to go, set up your camera, take the shot, post editing, all that. So every image that you make is roughly the same amount of effort. That's not true with rendering. So it depends on what you need. You can tune the amount of effort you put into it to what your needs are on the back end.
Yeah, and Jeff brings up a good point in the chat too about Visualize. You can use lenses that don't actually exist. So
True.
You have an f2.0 35 millimeter lens, which is going to be a few $1,000s.
Yep.
You could shoot an f.5 30 millimeter lens that doesn't exist. Yeah, so
I
infinite
am
devices.
definitely guilty of cranking that f-stop down into a range that would be
Yeah,
not even possible in
physically
real life,
impossible.
but it gives me the effect that I want, so I don't really care so much. Yeah, that's a great point.
All right, man.
Are
Well,
we get,
we've got
getting?
3 hot takes. So we ready to move
We
on
do.
to our
We
next
do.
one? Because
We're doing
they're
on
going to get
time.
exponentially more difficult here.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, so this is a good question. No one can tell the difference between a 10-minute render and a 10-hour render. This question is a question I get asked a lot, and in brainstorming with Sean, who's producing this episode for us, thanks, Sean. He came up with this question, and I'm glad he did because I probably wouldn't have thought about it, even though I do get asked this question. And as I started to prep stuff for this. That was a bunch of comparisons between, okay, I changed this little thing in this image and I changed this little thing in this image. Can you see what the difference is between one and the other? And as I started to put things together, I realized that actually this is the wrong question. It's more to do with what I just said, and that is that you can render to the needs per project. But people, I think the rendering perceptions are totally flipped from what people think takes a lot of time in rendering and what actually takes a lot of time in rendering. So I kind of switched gears with how I answered this question to go back and talk about what the process of rendering actually is and what you have control over to control how much time it takes for you to do a rendering. So if you compare these two side to side, this might be what you're kind of thinking in your head. Like, is this one on the left a 10-minute rendering versus the one on the right being a 10-hour rendering, right? The one on the left is just a regular kind of studio shot on alpha. The one on the right took me quite a bit longer, but it's in context. It's more of that beauty shot. Now, this did take me a lot longer, but it's not really for the reasons that you would think. And this question kind of raises more questions than it does answers, right? A 10-minute render for who? Everybody's got a different skill level. I could make a rendering in 10 minutes that would look totally different than somebody else, or somebody who's never made a rendering before could make in 10 minutes. Or on what machine? What's your GPU? How quick is your actual machine? On what model? For what purpose? What resolution? What environment? That question is almost meaningless in the sense of what you would get out in some time span. So that's why I kind of flipped this around to think what what is the question here? And the question is what actually takes time and how do you control it? So there are a handful of things that I just put here as examples of things that may take longer or shorter than you would expect. First one being general model hygiene, right? This is how good is your company at modeling things up because you're taking that model and you're using that model as it is for the rendering. So if you get into the rendering mode and you realize, oh shoot, there's a bunch of parts missing, all of the hardware is somehow gone. A bunch of these are in the wrong revision or things like that. So the state of the model that you get it, huge factor. What I like to think of rendering as an analogy is getting your car painted. If you take your car to get painted, you're going to pull in, they're going to look over your car and they're going to say, okay, it'll be 10 grand to paint your car. And you say 10 grand, it's 20 minutes of how could it possibly cost that much? Right? The actual painting of the car is almost inconsequential to the process, right? What they need to do is they need to take all the trim off. They need to sand the whole thing down. Maybe if all your panel gaps are all messed up or you've got dents, now they got to go through, pull all those. They got to flatten it, block the car, put all the filler, block it again, put a coat of primer on it, block it again. It's the process. The actual painting of the car is almost nothing. So all of that work, that setup work, is what makes the paint job look good. But it's all of that kind of hidden thing. And rendering is directly analogous to that kind of process. It's what you're taking when you're going in, how much work that takes to get it to where it needs to be. And then the rendering part is just putting the paint on, right? Putting the paint on the wall, putting the paint on the car. So the model hygiene, as you get it, is very important. Adding the appearances, this could be a huge factor. I've worked with projects that I had need to go through and put appearances on literally thousands of components before I can start rendering. And I've worked with projects where the model is done. The appearances are all set on the model. You build them in as you're doing that engineering process. You basically bring it in, make some tweaks, and you're ready to go. That's a huge span of time from one to the other, right? Creating and sourcing appearances. How different are they from what you already have in your personal library and the library that comes with Visualize? Visualize comes with a ton of appearances. By the way, if you're using Visualize and you don't realize there's a cloud mode, there's even more appearances available to you than what just show up locally. But if you're looking for appearances that are outside of those bounds or they're very, very specific, you might spend more time trying to dial those in.
Yep. That makes sense.
Adding
Jesse,
and managing. Go ahead.
Are you a car guy?
Yes. How'd you know? Adding and managing model detail is also a factor, right? On this particular RX, I ended up going in and modeling, the chain. I did some modeling for the wheels, modeled the brake lines up, things that you may not need in the engineering phase, you may need for the rendering phase, right? So if there are things that are omitted in the engineering process because they're just not necessary, you may need or want, right? Again, these are all things we can control. That you may need or want to add those things back in or model them or source them. So it's a factor.
And you and I have talked about this before, but about how the human eye and the brain can pick up such small little intricacies that may not exist in the real world. And even though you don't, catch it in your psyche up front, your subconscious will recognize that. So those little details, and you're really good about adding them in. Even on this model, you did an appearance on just the outside of the tread of the tire to have that dirt appearance.
Yep.
That little detail there is time well worth spent because it's something the eye picks up. You put it in there by, I'm guessing, split some faces or whatever.
Exactly.
Applied it. But so I see your point about it can take time, but the time, is relative to what your end result's going to be.
Yeah, certainly. And I wouldn't have done that, right? I wouldn't have gone through selecting every one of these little faces to add dirt onto the tire if I was just doing that for an internal review meeting.
Yeah,
totally unnecessary. But if it's going on the website or going on social media or somewhere where I want a customer to engage with it, it might be totally worth it, right? Sure. So these are all factors that are within your control when you're doing the rendering. Positioning of models. This is one that people don't think about all that often. So in this example, it's a little bit hard to see, but I have the wheels turned ever so slightly. They're turned a little bit. How easy is it for those actions to happen in your model? That's a variable, because you might go in and just click one mate. If your assembly is set up pretty well, right? You go in, click one mate, adjust the angle, save, done. Or you might go in, click that one mate, the whole thing blows up because the intern built it, and then you've got to go fix all of those things, and maybe that's not worth it anymore, right? So there are things like that are pretty large, potentially time variables that you want to think about or consider. Building 3D scenes. This is another one for this project. These scenes I built all in 3D. I modeled this building and then kind of kit bashed this out with some sourced files and things like that, modeled the sign and whatever, and modeled this room. Is that going to be worth it again for an internal design review? No, that's way too much time effort for something. But if it's a big project, then maybe it makes some sense, right? And you can also control how much effort you put in based on how many things do you need to get out. Do you need to make a bunch of images at a bunch of different angles? Because that will reduce the amount of time, per image that that effort takes. Versus, do you just need a backplate image just for one image, right? And you can make things faster. Sure. But again, something that you can control. Lastly, lighting setup. So this is one that is underrated in the amount of time that it can take, but it's very important, right? I mentioned earlier at the top of the show, volumetrics for FDO2. We just got this. This was the image that I made for that demo that went with it. And you can see, I've got a bunch of lighting set up in here, light streaks and lighting up on the top and all of that. If you take that same exact image, just take the lights out and put a different HDR on it, it looks like a totally different image. This is an identical image. It's 4K, it's 1500 passes, it's, full high quality, but it doesn't look even remotely similar almost to this, right? Same camera angle, same everything, just change the lights. So things like that are all of the factors that are within your control when you're setting up these renderings. So I think the question of saying, can you tell the difference between a 10-minute or a 10-hour render? It's kind of moot, right? If you know that you're going to be rendering you have control over all of these factors way earlier in the process, right? As you're building that model and controlling those factors, you can set your model up in such a way that you can get a killer 10-minute rendering because it's already prepped for it. On the flip side, if none of that was considered in the entire process, now you're on the hook for considering all of that stuff that maybe should have been done at the point that you need to do the rendering. So I think the question itself is a little fluid. But my point is, one, you have the ability to control what you put effort into. And two, if you as a company know you're going to be doing rendering, these are some of the things that you might want to consider to just build into your process so that when you get there, you almost get the rendering for free in a sense. You have very little work to do.
Yeah, and Astro Sets, Jeff in the chat brings up a good point about using DOF. That's not degrees of freedom. That's depth of field. So
Yeah.
DOF and engineering and kinematics and photography are a little different. So DOF, depth of field, which is where you blur out that background. It's an option. I believe, Jesse, you enable that in the filter or the camera, right?
In the camera, yep.
Yeah, so you can turn that on. He's saying blur out the background a little bit, gives that more lifelike, and you can kind of cheat around blurring out some of the background. Now, this is sorry if I'm getting ahead of you, but there's a lot of cool content here. Where can I go to learn some of this stuff? Like,
that's a very astute question, Mike. Yeah, I actually just put a tutorial for this up last week. We have a new tutorial page for SolidWorks. And I put up this a tutorial, a little 20-minute thing that just gives some tips and tricks on setting up this in particular. But if you didn't realize that we have a tutorial page, it's relatively new. But there's a bunch of content already there from previous videos. So there's quite a bit that you can check out on there already. Obviously, the one that I'd like you to check out is this one. But yeah, you can poke around on there. There's lots of great stuff on there already, and it will be continuing to build out more and more as we go. But yeah, FDO2, great function that we got for Visualize, and I just put up a little tutorial for that one.
Nice. Yeah, we've had tutorials on our main solidworks.com or youtube.com/solidworks in the past. Everything's getting migrated over to and we'll put the link in the chat, but youtube.com/tutorials or sorry, SolidWorks YT is going to be there you go. Tutorials YT. SolidWorks.com tutorials YT. I'll get that right. To get you to that YouTube page. And again, we're going to be putting tutorials of all things design, rendering. I'm sure everything will go up there, so check it out if you're not familiar with that yet. All right, man.
Definitely.
Are we done on your 5 of these? Because we got the big topic is AI has already killed photo rendering, and I think if you haven't seen an AI rendered image out there, you have. You may just not have known it, and I think that's my argument, Jesse. Is like I can't tell the difference. People have 5 fingers now in AI images. They figured that out.
Yeah. I mean, all of the images that were miscellaneous images that I made in this presentation were AI. Did you notice? Probably not, right? Looks kind of like stock photography in a lot of ways. I think this is the big question of the set. Has AI already killed photo rendering? But I think for me, there's no better time to learn rendering with Visualize than right now, which may sound like a controversial take on this, but again, I think that question sort of misses the root question. And the root question is, am I wasting my time, right? That's really what we all want to know. What's going to happen in the future? Are we wasting our time doing what we're doing right now? And that can go a couple different ways, right? Like, has the pro renderer become obsolete? AI, just you click a button and you get an image. Or if you're somebody who's totally fresh to rendering, right? Should a noob not even bother learning how to render? Because by the time you figure it out, AI is going to have it knocked out. Is it a skill that's even worth having anymore? I think that's the root of those questions. And I think there's a few questions that I ask in trying to kind of sift through this. One, is the output still valuable, right? Are we still trying to get to the same end goal as we were before, or is it something totally different? I think yes. I think it's pretty evident to basically all of us at this point that visual content is extremely valuable at this point. You go anywhere on social media, on websites. When's the last time you bought a product off of a paragraph of text? Like 10 years ago, right? Everything needs to be visually engaging, and it's an incredibly important part of having in your product launches and for your company as a whole. So the output that you get from rendering, definitely still valuable. Okay, so that's a good check mark. The follow-up question is obviously, can AI do it better or faster than we can do it? My answer to this is not yet. I won't say that I can tell the future, but I'll say not yet, and I'll expand on that in a second. The third question that I asked then is, okay, will AI change the way that we render? That I will say almost certainly. And I have some ways that we can talk about how that might happen. So those are the three questions that I kind of used to parse through that top level question of what should I be doing about this, right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think rendering is about to get a lot more fun. So I think this is a really great time to get into rendering, and that's my opinion on it. So let's go back to that second question. Can AI do it better? Because that's really the heart of the issue. If something can do it better and faster, then you should just let it do that. There's a couple things about that, though. AI works off of what it already knows. Your design is something new, hopefully, right? If it's not a new design, then you're probably not developing it. So that's already not a great place to start for AI, and that you're trying to get it to do something that it doesn't have any reference for. You're literally inventing it on the spot. So that you're already at a disadvantage trying to use AI for product rendering, because you're making something that there's no back information on. The other thing is paragraphs of text are not instant accurate representations. I think the easiest way for me to think about this is, if any of you guys have been a consultant or worked with a consultant, that process of back and forth is never smooth, right? When you're working with a client, they tell you, I want this, that, and the other thing. And you say, okay, perfect. You do this, that, and the other thing. You hand it back and they say, that's not at all what I was talking about. Like, I wanted this, that, and the other thing. So then you go back and make a change. That process is very difficult to get something out of someone's head and into your head with just text. And that's really the way that we're interacting with AI right now, is just through text. So you're going to have the same struggles as if you were working with a client, or vice versa, whatever that scenario is. It's very much that same dynamic, right? It's just coming up with what it thinks, and then you've got to go back and try to say, no, that's not it at all. The other thing is, generalities are not really helpful in the final stage of product design. You've got everything dialed in exactly the way that you want your customer to see it and experience it. AI is taking a lot of liberties, right? It can get a lot of things right, but it's also taking a lot of liberties. So when you chuck something into AI and say, fix it for me, it's referencing all of your competitor and whatever it can find information to try to build that into what you have, which may or may not be even remotely close to what you're trying to do with it. The main problem that I have is lack of direct fine control. This is starting to get worked out now. There's a lot of node-based workflows for AI where you take the prompt and then you run that into an image, and then you run another prompt into that image, and you start combining and layering and things like that, where you've got a little bit finer control over, okay, now adjust exactly this, and now adjust only exactly that. And they work pretty well, but they're also really difficult to use, right? It's not put in a block of text and you're going to get an image. So that process is still pretty time consuming. Of course, that at the end here, there's also potential IP concerns, right? You're going to be uploading your design that's not even on the market yet to some system, which hopefully you trust, but who knows, right? Depending on what system you're trying to use to get input back out. And of course, then there's potential legal implications of product misrepresentation. If you just throw something into AI and it looks roughly like the thing you're going to sell, and you put it on your website, and then people say this isn't what you're selling at all, that's not going to be good. So yes, AI is really good at making images that at this point are basically undetectable, but it really lacks a lot of control and direction, and the process of revisions is still really, really crude. Could that change? Maybe, right?
Yeah, I think on this list, I agree with all of these, and it's a good argument. The one that I appreciate you bringing up is the lost in translation. Yeah. And, it's a great analogy with being a consultant. We worked with customers doing rendering or looking at Visualize as a solution, and the precision in which marketing requires certain things to whoever is running the rendering software is insane. So between those two, to have, two humans interacting and to fine tune versus, arguing with AI, I think is a good argument. The other one, Jesse, is like, you just look at artists in general out there now, and to me, someone who is rendering from CAD is an artist. There's an artistic aspect of
For
that.
sure.
It's a reputation thing as well, and I think that's going to last, and that'll be around for a while. And in engineering and in design, where like accuracy and precision is such a pride point of so many companies, as soon as you say, hey, we're taking all this accuracy and precision that we're putting into our designs, into our modeling, our manufacturing, but yet you skimp on these images to reflect your geometry, I think is a thing that could, it could be impactful to the reputation of your brand, your company, and even yourself. So
Yeah.
great list here. I think it's a really
I
powerful
agree. And there are, I've certainly worked with people in the past that they are very, very particular about how their images look, down to, the minor roughnesses of appearances. And I'm the same way, obviously, when I'm doing my rendering. But if you're looking for that level of detail, which we almost always are out of rendering, trying to come up with an image that's 90% perfect, give it to an AI, or have it have created that, and then say, change the roughness of this particular part that's way in the back. You can almost see it. It's the one on the left. See the silver one, that, can you change the roughness of that one? And then it comes back with a picture of a coffee cup instead. It's like, okay, this is exhausting. And I'm sure anybody who has worked with AI imagery has that experience. That aspect could get better. I'm not going to say that won't get better, because it could and probably will.
Yeah.
But I do think you're right in the sense that the level of detail and accuracy and requirement for direct changes we need is less likely to become a factor with AI. Take out the potential IP concerns and just the general control. Now, the next thing is then, how will AI change the way we render? Because I think that's really this is the part that excites me, and why I think this is a perfect time to get into rendering, because I think AI, in whatever form it takes, whatever its final form is, I think has the opportunity to really enhance the way that we render. There's a lot, full disclosure, there's a lot of ways that AI is being used in the general populace that I'm not too excited about. The technology, though, has great applications for what we do in the rendering process, and I am really excited about that. I think hybrid workflows are probably the way that things are going to happen in the future. That can happen in a few ways. Generative texture creation could be something that is a thing. This image on the right-hand side is an image that I made last night. I put a picture of rust into an LLM. I said, make me a set of PBR textures that looks kind of like this rust. It did. It gave me these as the direct output. I chucked it into Visualize and just put it on a couple primitives. And this is what it gave me. So within 1 minute, I made a custom appearance in just a general purpose LLM, not even a rendering specific tool, and made a custom appearance that was similar to what I needed. Now, does it look good? Not really. But does it look bad? No, it doesn't look bad either. And again, this was just a general purpose LLM. It was not a rendering specific tool. And within 1 minute, I said, give me something that looks like this, and it spit out the maps that I needed to make that happen in Visualize.
Yeah, I had a similar one, Jesse. Was I wanted a weld bead, and I Google searched it. They're out there, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted. So using my preferred LLM, went in, and it actually gave me a nodal based approach. It gave me sliders.
Cool.
So it came up, and this was like a month ago. It didn't give me, and then I reran it, and it actually gave me sliders where I could customize that. And I was looking for a normal map, and customize the normal map to change the scaling of it, the displacements of it, everything, and it worked awesome. So
that's really cool.
Sean brings up a great point in the chat here. Think about, like, should I have AI do the bulk of the work? We're a lot of times we're thinking top level, like, is it going to replace my rendering altogether? Yes. No, I think to Sean's point and your point is we need to figure out what parts of the workflow are often interrupted, like figuring out, man, I want this exact rust material appearance to be applied, but I don't have this. That's where AI comes in. Like, do the dirty work that I I can't figure out. Let me focus on the big picture.
Right. Yeah. Building these appearances from scratch is quite difficult. I will admit I'm not great at it, but it's quite a process, right? So to do this in 1 minute and get pretty close is pretty
Yeah.
cool. Some other ideas, light matching, right? If you can take an image and say, where's the light coming from in this picture? Match my lights up in Visualize. That's something that's potentially possible. Backplate creation, those generic things that are sitting in the background that don't need to be specific. Perfect application for that, right? I want to see this in a boat arena or whatever, wherever the context is. That stuff that's in the background is inconsequential, right? We brought up depth of field. Maybe it's not even in focus. It just needs to look like something is vaguely back there. Perfect application for stuff like that.
Yeah, great
Camera
point.
matching, texture wrapping, enhanced graphics performance. We already have some of that in the software, right? There are just little things that slow the process down that I think AI can do a lot to make that process a lot faster. And the great thing is we still have all of that control of getting exactly what we want. We're just using AI as that, side tool to get the really nitty gritty stuff that is very time consuming out of the way for us. So I think if I'm right, AI will not replace product rendering, which means that rendering is still a great skill to have. AI will just accelerate all of the knowledge that you already have and will gain. And again, it's never been a better time to start rendering them right now. If I'm wrong, AI will replace product rendering. So AI takes over. But here's the thing though, AI gets the best results from incredibly specific language. The only way that you're going to know that specific language is if you already know those terms and adjustments to make in rendering. You can translate all of that information to the AI tool. So that means that your rendering skills, all of your taste and eye and all of that stuff carries over to a new workflow. So I think if you want to hedge your bets, SOLIDWORKS Visualize has the lowest barrier to entry for learning how to render.
Yep.
So I would still say that right this second, if you want to get into image creation as a SOLIDWORKS user, Visualize is the best way to do it. You're going to learn all the terminology. It's incredibly easy to use. And any of that information is going to carry over into whatever system you use in 10 years. So that's my pitch on what AI I might do.
All right, we heard a lot here. I want to hear from the chat. We got a lot of pretty hardcore rendering guys and gals that are in the chat as well right now. What do you guys think the future looks like? I mean, Jeff, you even said it. I'm living in the future now. What do you think the actual future is going to portray when it comes to rendering with AI? Do you think that will replace workflows, or does Jesse make a really strong point here that it's just going to help elevate certain aspects of our rendering needs? And if it does take over, being someone who is fluent in rendering terminology, can speak the language, walk the walk, we have tuned our eye a little bit to catch those unique details so we can see what AI does. Do you guys believe there's value there as well? Because I do. I think I agree with you, Jesse. I think you've won this debate.
Yes.
I mean, I wasn't going to argue against you too much, but
sure.
For those who know me, I also love to spend time in Visualize. Yeah, so really cool, man. I've got some good things to wrap up here.
Cool.
Man, I learned a lot. One, just a reminder that we do have that new tutorials channel, solidworks.com, tutorials YT, to get over to there, check those out. And you've got a great tutorial on the newest enhancement that I think we're most excited about, and that's volumetrics. So you can create that kind of smoky, lighty effect, which has been a long, we've been waiting that for a little bit, and it's now available. There's been a lot of great comments in the chat. Sorry, I haven't been able to turn back to these, but people talking about the ease of entry with Visualize. You talked about it as well. Yeah, if you're new, yeah, it is. It's really easy to pick up. Don't be afraid. You can't break anything. You can't break a production CAD model. It's a one-way bridge over. So play with it, have fun. If you have SOLIDWORKS Professional or Premium at the company you work with, you have Visualize Standard. So check with your admin on getting that license. A lot of times they don't even know that they can activate that and get it up and running. We also have an online product trial that you can give it a whirl, play around with it a bit.
Yeah, great point. And the named user version of SOLIDWORKS, the 3D Experience version, comes with what's essentially Pro. So that's something good to know too.
Yeah, and
Visualize
Pro's got
Visualize Pro.
animations. There's more, so a few things with like lighting and stuff, but for the
Lights,
most part,
volumes, all sorts of great stuff. Yep.
Yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff in there. I learned how to paint a car. I'm really excited about that.
Yep.
I know what I'm doing this afternoon. Changing my car from blue to, I don't know, black.
Yep.
No, man, like I think the big thing is like that fast mode. You mentioned it. If you've played with Visualize and it's been a little while, go back. If you haven't played with it recently, and check it out because it's been overhauled and it is fast.
Yeah.
Fast mode is super fast. DSPBRs, that was a big game changer. You hit on the whys, the integration with desktop. That's something for 2026 moving forward. You'll have some legacy appearances in those old CAD models, but the new ones, if you model in 2026. And I think on that too, as we talk about versions, just remember you can be, if your company's running 21, 18, SOLIDWORKS, whatever, you can still be running on 2026 Visualize. You can upgrade Visualize to the latest, greatest and get a lot of these features, even if your CAD platform is not. I think on the AI topic, lost in translation, that was a note I put down, is a good one. Oh, and the 10 hours to 10 minutes. That was a really cool topic. I didn't want to cut you off too much on time, but Jesse, I loved how you talked about the 10 hours is no longer on the tail end of sitting around. You busted that myth in the first topic, right? We said, nope, you don't have to worry about it anymore. The hardware is taking care of that. AI engines behind that are taking care of time waiting for rendering, but that 10 hours is now can be put up front depending on the deliverable. If they want, a massive image with like super unique detail, you might have extra time, but for the most part, 10 minutes up front in the time spent, and you're going to get a pretty good output. I really love that topic. So I've got more notes. This was great. I was done, but I think I'll cut it at that. Anyone in the chat, if you have anything you want to share, please do, and as always, we love having you here. The future is faster rendering. It is AI assisted workflows, right? It is smarter iterations, and more intentional use of realism, but it's not replacing these rendering tools or rendering workflows or us, people who love to do it. And I agree with you on that. So again, thank you everyone for tuning in to SOLIDWORKS Live Design. We had a great time. Jesse, thank you so much for all your time and your expertise.
Absolutely.
And also the awesome splash screens that you keep pumping out year over year. So, all right, thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of SOLIDWORKS Live Design. Take care.
Bye, guys.